My name is Catherine Miller. I am 62 years old, a retired librarian, and a woman who spent most of her life quietly serving her family. People often said I was the kind of person who kept everything running smoothly in the background, but who was rarely noticed in the spotlight. Perhaps that was true. Perhaps that is why, when my son Daniel passed away, no one imagined the secret I was carrying inside my heart. After his death, I remained silent. I never told a soul about the $25 million company he had left solely to me. Not to his wife, not even to his closest friends. Only me. Thank God I did, because 3 days later, my daughter-in-law removed her mask, and what she did next left me in utter shock. I remember the day of Daniel's funeral as if it were carved into stone. The church was draped in white lilies, but to me the air was cold, suffocating. My hands shook as I clutched the photo of my boy, his smile frozen in a frame, while my chest ached with a pain that words could never capture. Sarah, my daughter-in-law, was dressed in black silk, a veil covering half her face. She sobbed at just the right moments. Her shoulders trembled when eyes were upon her. She pressed a handkerchief to her lips when people offered condolences. To anyone else, she looked like the perfect grieving widow. But I sat there, and I saw something different. Because while she wept, her gaze betrayed her. It wasn't fixed on Daniel's photo. It wasn't searching for comfort in the hymn's number. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, lingered on the small brass key that the lawyer held, the key to Daniel's safe deposit box. It was a glance so fleeting, so subtle, that others might have missed it, but not me. I had lived long enough, endured enough, to recognize hunger when I saw it. I tried to focus on the service, on Daniel's memory, on the sound of Liam, my 10-year-old grandson, sniffling beside me. His small hand gripped mine so tightly as if he was afraid I would vanish too. And maybe, in a sense, he was right, because part of me did vanish that day. A mother should never have to bury her son. The earth felt heavier when the casket was lowered, as if the world itself had conspired to press my soul into silence. Yet amid that silence, Sarah's performance continued. She accepted pity with practiced grace, whispered thank yous, and tilted her head just enough to appear fragile. People comforted her. They praised her strength. But no one noticed how little she looked at her own child. No one noticed how her eyes gleamed, not with sorrow, but with calculation. And in that moment, I realized my silence was not weakness. It was a shield. If Sarah knew about the company Daniel had left to me, she would devour it whole, leaving nothing for Liam. The mask she wore was convincing, but masks can only stay on for so long. That night, I sat alone in Daniel's study. His scent lingered on the leather chair. Papers still rested on his desk as though he had simply stepped out for a moment. My fingers traced the edge of a photograph. Daniel holding baby Liam in his arms, smiling at the future he believed he had time to build. I whispered into the emptiness, "I will protect him. I promise." It was then I remembered the words from Daniel's private letter, the one I had hidden away before the funeral. "Mom, I trust you with everything. The company is yours. Do not let Sarah near it. She will not protect Liam the way you will." Those words became my anchor. That was the reason for my silence. That was the reason I kept my lips sealed, even when people questioned me, even when Sarah leaned too close, pretending to cry on my shoulder. And 3 days later, when her mask slipped and her true self stepped into the light, I finally understood the depth of Daniel's warning. Because what she did next nearly tore our family apart. But before I take you there, let me ask you something. Have you ever watched someone play the perfect role, only to realize their performance was for everyone else, not for you? If you know what that feels like, stay with me. Because this is not just my story. This is a story about masks, about silence, and about the moment when quiet strength becomes the only weapon left. I knew, deep down, that my silence had saved me. And more importantly, it had saved my grandson. When I think back on my son's life, it feels like watching a film reel that plays behind my eyelids every night. Daniel was always in motion, always chasing something faster, brighter, bigger than the world around him. As a little boy, he was the one who scraped his knees more than any of the other children on our street, climbing trees too high and racing his bike down hills too steep. I would call after him, warning him to slow down, but he would just laugh, his hair flying behind him, shouting that he wanted to touch the sky. I was already a widow by then. My husband had passed when Daniel was only 10. Suddenly, the responsibility of raising him fell entirely on my shoulders. People told me it would be too much, that a quiet librarian like me could never fill the role of both parents. But I discovered something in myself that day, a kind of resilience born not out of choice, but necessity. Daniel became my reason to get up each morning, to keep food on the table, to smile even when my heart was aching. One memory stands above all others. Daniel was 16, full of restless energy and impossible dreams. While other boys were playing football or hanging around the mall, Daniel was spending late nights in our garage. That garage smelled of engine oil and cardboard boxes, lit by a single buzzing lamp that hung overhead. He would sit there with a notebook filled with sketches, diagrams, numbers that barely made sense to me. He was obsessed with trucks, shipping routes, and the way goods moved from one place to another. Miller Logistics, he told me one night, his eyes glowing brighter than the lamp above us. That's the name, Mom. One day it'll be on the side of every truck in the country. I smiled at him, though my fingers trembled as I held my cup of tea. That teacup was white porcelain, plain and unassuming, the only set of fine china my husband and I had bought when we were newlyweds. It had survived moves, storms, and accidents, and each night, while Daniel worked, I sat with that cup in my hands, sipping slowly, anchoring myself in the quiet faith that somehow, against all odds, his dream might take flight. I worked double shifts at the library to pay for his first used truck. I scrimped on clothes and vacations so he could attend community business classes. I even pawned a gold bracelet, one of the last gifts from my late husband, to help Daniel register his company name. I never told him about the bracelet. Some sacrifices are meant to remain invisible, woven into the fabric of love. There were nights when exhaustion pressed down on me like a heavy stone, nights when I wondered if I was foolish, letting my son chase something so uncertain when stability was already so fragile. But then I would see him, grease on his hands, hope in his eyes, and I could not deny him. He wasn't chasing recklessness anymore. He was building. And I decided I would build with him, even if all I had to offer was my steady presence, my listening ear, and the endless refilling of that white porcelain teacup. The company grew slowly, then suddenly, one contract led to another. Daniel's late-night sketches became actual delivery routes. His first truck was followed by a second, then a fleet. The name Miller Logistics appeared on the side of vehicles that roared down highways I had never traveled. My son transformed before my eyes. The boy who once wanted to touch the sky became a man who carried the weight of his employees, his clients, and his family on his shoulders. I felt pride, yes, but more than that, I felt awe. He had turned our garage into the seed of an empire. And yet, despite all his success, he never forgot the woman who sat quietly in the corner, sipping tea. Sometimes he would press a kiss to the top of my head, whispering, "I couldn't have done this without you, Mom." I kept that teacup safe, always washed by hand, never put into the dishwasher. It wasn't just porcelain, it was memory. It was the witness to Daniel's first dreams, his first failures, his first victories. When he bought his first office downtown, he placed that very cup on the shelf above his desk, telling me it was his good luck charm. Now, when I hold that cup, I feel the echo of his voice, the warmth of his presence. It is more than an object. It is the anchor that binds me to him, reminding me of the years when sacrifice was invisible and love was the only currency that mattered. Little did I know, that cup and the memories it carried would one day give me strength to endure the storm that followed his death. It was the kind of night that swallows sound. The clock on my bedside table glowed faintly, its hands pointing to 3 a.m. I was half awake, tangled between dream and reality, when the phone rang. That sound, sharp, insistent, split through the silence like glass breaking. I knew before I picked it up that nothing good ever comes at that hour. A voice on the other end, official and rehearsed, told me there had been an accident. My son, Daniel Miller, had been in a collision. I remember gripping the receiver so tightly my knuckles went white. Words blurred, critical, unresponsive, come immediately. My body moved on instinct while my mind tried to reject the message. I slipped on shoes, pulled a sweater over my nightgown, and drove through the empty streets toward the hospital, praying with every red light that somehow it was all a mistake. The emergency entrance glowed like a beacon, but once inside, it felt like a cavern of echoes. The smell of disinfectant stung my nose, and the harsh fluorescent lights made everything appear unreal, like a stage where tragedy was being performed. I heard the wail of sirens fade as another ambulance pulled away. Nurses moved with practiced efficiency. Doctors whispered in low voices. The world was moving, yet inside me, everything had stopped. When they led me down a hallway, I saw the gurney being wheeled past. For a moment, I thought I might collapse. There was my Daniel, my boy, my man, my everything, still and pale, tubes and wires surrounding him. His face, once so full of life, was frozen in silence. I reached for him, but the orderly steered me aside, murmuring something I could not hear. Then came Sarah. She arrived in a rush, her hair perfectly in place despite the hour. She wore black leggings and a loose sweater, not the disheveled panic I expected from a grieving wife. Her face was composed, her eyes red but dry. She didn't scream, she didn't crumble to the floor. Instead, she accepted the clipboard from the nurse, glanced at the papers, and with one quick stroke of her pen, signed. Her hand was steady, her jaw set. I stood there, trembling, waiting for her to fall apart, waiting for her to show the same agony ripping through me. But she only looked at me once, a small nod, as if acknowledging a minor inconvenience. "It's done," she whispered. No tears, no sobbing into her hands, just those 2 words. And I broke. My chest tightened until I could not breathe. It felt as if my heart had been pulled from my body. I pressed my palm against the cold wall of the corridor, searching for something solid to hold on to as the truth pressed down on me. Daniel was gone. The boy who once promised me he would put our name on trucks across the country. The man who kissed the top of my head after long days of work. My son, my flesh, my pride. He was gone. I don't remember sitting down, but suddenly I was in one of those hard plastic chairs, staring at the sterile floor tiles. The world sounded far away, the beep of machines, the shuffle of shoes, the squeak of wheels on linoleum. Every sound was muffled by the deafening roar inside my head, a mother's grief, wordless and unbearable. I tried to pray, but no words would come. All I could do was whisper his name. Daniel. The syllables cracked in my throat like broken glass. My body shook with the weight of silence. The tears that finally came were hot and endless, soaking into the sweater I had thrown on without thought. Sarah sat across from me. She crossed her legs neatly, scrolling through her phone for a moment before putting it away. I searched her face for something. Anguish, despair, love. But what I found was a calm so cold it made me shiver. She looked like someone waiting for a flight to be called, not a widow who had just lost her husband. The doctor came, speaking in words I could barely register. He didn't make it. We did everything possible. I'm sorry for your loss. Sorry. The words sounded hollow, useless against the cavern of grief opening inside me. I pressed my hands together, my nails digging into my skin, forcing myself to stay upright. In that moment, I realized that life as I had known it had ended, not just because Daniel was gone, but because something inside Sarah's silence unsettled me. It was not the silence of grief, but the silence of calculation. That night carved itself into my soul. The hospital's sterile walls, the clipboard Sarah signed without hesitation, the moment my heart stopped with my son's. Nothing would ever be the same again. 3 days after the accident, the air still smelled of lilies and stale coffee from the funeral. My body moved like a ghost, yet duty carried me into the oak-paneled office of Alan Matthews, the family attorney who had known Daniel since he was a boy. His voice had called me the night before, steady and solemn, instructing us both to be present for the reading of the will. The office was warm but heavy with silence. The blinds were half drawn, letting in pale stripes of winter light that fell across the table stacked with folders. Sarah walked in ahead of me, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. Her black dress was perfectly tailored, her lips painted in muted rose. She looked the part of the grieving widow, but I noticed the way her eyes darted around the room, not to the photographs of justice on the wall, not to the framed certificates on the shelf, but to the polished box that sat on Alan's desk. Alan cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses. Mrs. Miller, Mrs. Sarah Miller, he began formally. We are here today to honor the last will and testament of Daniel James Miller. His tone carried the weight of decades of service, and the words pressed against my chest like stones. I clasped my hands tightly in my lap, bracing myself. Sarah leaned forward, poised and attentive, her chin resting lightly on her manicured fingers. Alan unfolded the document and began to read. Per Daniel's wishes, the Miller family home will be placed in the Miller Testamentary Trust, with joint ownership between his son, Liam Miller, and his surviving spouse, Sarah Miller. While Liam is a minor, the property will remain under legal guardianship until the court recognizes his majority. Sarah's lips curved. It was not the trembling smile of relief, but a calculated grin of victory. She believed the trust meant she held the reins. Her eyes flickered to me, the corners narrowing ever so slightly. I knew what she was thinking. With Liam under her custody, the house was hers to command. I lowered my gaze, letting her think she had won. That was when Alan paused, his hand moving to a separate envelope set aside on the desk. There is, however, another matter. Daniel left a personal directive for his mother. Sarah's smile faltered. She straightened in her chair, her voice sharper than before. A directive? What kind of directive? Alan's eyes met mine with a flicker of compassion. He slid the envelope across the table toward me. This is not part of the public record. Daniel requested it remain sealed, addressed solely to you, Mrs. Miller. My hands trembled as I picked it up. The weight of the envelope was light, but inside I felt the gravity of my son's voice. I opened it slowly, careful not to tear the edges. The paper smelled faintly of his cologne. The handwriting, his handwriting, spilled across the page. My vision blurred with tears as I read, "Mom, if you are reading this, then I am no longer there to hold your hand, but I trust you. I trust you more than anyone else to protect Liam, to protect what I built. Miller Logistics belongs to you. Do not speak of it to Sarah. She would not understand sacrifice, and she would not safeguard Liam's future. Promise me you will keep silent, that you will guard this company until Liam is ready. Only you can. I love you. Your son, Daniel." I pressed the letter to my chest, as if by doing so I could feel his heartbeat again. Tears slid silently down my cheeks, but I did not let out a sound. Across from me, Sarah tapped her nails against the table, impatient. "What does it say?" she asked, her tone laced with suspicion. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it deep into the inside pocket of my coat. My voice was steady when I replied, "Just a mother's words from her son. Nothing more." Her eyes narrowed, scanning my face for cracks, for weakness. But I met her gaze with silence, the kind that speaks louder than shouting. She looked away first, her confidence returning as she clutched the thought of the house like a prize. Alan closed the folder. "That concludes the reading." His tone was final, professional, yet his eyes lingered on me with unspoken understanding. He knew. He had read the letter, perhaps. Or maybe he simply recognized the shift in power that Sarah did not see. As we left the office, Sarah walked a step ahead, humming under her breath, already calculating her next move. She believed the house was enough to secure her future. She had no idea of the truth I carried in my pocket, close to my heart, bound by my son's final plea. Outside, the air was sharp and cold. I paused for a moment, feeling the weight of Daniel's words pressing against me like a shield. For the first time since his death, I felt not only grief, but purpose. His faith in me, etched in ink, was now my silent armor. And I knew then, my silence was not weakness, it was survival. Morning light filtered through the kitchen blinds the day after the reading, turning dust into glitter that did nothing to soften the heaviness in my chest. I stood at the stove with my white porcelain teacup warming between my palms when Sarah walked in without knocking. She carried a glossy folder and the fast smile of a salesperson about to close. She laid photographs on the table, all chrome fixtures and city views, and spoke as if bidding for my consent. "Downtown is safer for Liam," she said. "Better schools, better opportunities, no creaky steps or drafty windows. We sell this house and move quickly. We can lock a great rate and finally start over." I set the cup down and pulled out a chair. "Sit, Sarah." My voice was soft, but it did not tremble. "The house is not something either of us can sell on a whim. It sits in the Miller Testamentary Trust. Liam holds the beneficial interest. Any sale or mortgage requires the trustee's approval and a court order because a minor's rights are involved. Without those, no title company will close." Her smile thinned. "So that is how this will be. Rules and paperwork while the roof leaks and the furnace moans. You want control, Catherine. You always have." "I want stability for Liam," I answered. "He just buried his father." She pushed the folder toward me, a photo sliding across the wood like a blade. "Stability looks like a doorman and a short commute to therapy. This neighborhood is stale. The market is up. We should move while buyers are hungry. Daniel would have wanted us to be smart." "Daniel put the house in a trust to protect his son," I said. "He named obligations with the right to occupy. Taxes, insurance, basic maintenance fall on the occupant. That is you for now. If you want to change, we petition the court and let a judge decide what serves Liam's best interest." Sarah's cheeks flushed. She slapped the table. The porcelain rattled. "You are hiding behind legalese to block me. Admit it. You never thought I was good enough for Daniel. Now you want to run the show because you shelved books and memorized rules." I felt the sting, then let it pass. Years of quiet had taught me that silence can be a wall no storm will breach. I lifted the cup and took a slow sip. The tea was strong. It steadied me. Small footsteps crossed the hall. Liam hovered at the doorway holding the worn leather football Daniel had restored for him. The seams were dark with oil, his fingers pressed into the grooves the way a child holds on to the last warm thing in a cold room. He did not speak. His eyes traveled between us like birds looking for a safe branch. Sarah noticed him and modulated her tone. "Sweetheart, we are talking about a new home with a view of the river. You will love it." There is a game room and a study nook and a gym downstairs. Liam's arms tightened around the ball. He gave a tiny shake of the head. I kept my gaze on Sarah. Grief is a long road. Children do not need new views as much as they need familiar floors under their feet. She threw her hands up. Familiar floors come with familiar bills. The trust can pay. Daniel left money. The trust protects Liam's future, I said. It is not a cash machine for convenience. She leaned in close enough for me to smell her perfume, bright and expensive. Then what good are you, she whispered, if you cannot make a simple sale happen? Before I could answer, her phone chimed. She stepped back, composing herself, thumbs flying as she replied to someone with ferocious speed. When she looked up, the mask was back in place. Fine, she said. If a judge is what you need, a judge is what you will get. Liam flinched at the word judge. I motioned him over. He came to my side and tucked the football against his chest. I brushed his hair back. You are safe, I told him. We move when moving helps your heart, not when it helps a schedule. Sarah gathered the photos, but her eyes swept the room like a hawk scanning for a smaller creature. Where is the key to Daniel's box? She asked lightly. With the attorney, I said. She froze for a heartbeat, then smiled again. Of course. She left the folder behind by mistake, or perhaps on purpose. The storm had finally begun tonight. The argument erupted 2 evenings later, the air heavy with August heat and grief that had nowhere to go. Sarah stormed into the living room, her heels striking the floor like a drumbeat of war. She carried another stack of glossy brochures, condos with open-plan kitchens and endless windows, as if pictures could bulldoze trust law. You are poison, Catherine, she spat, tossing the brochures on the coffee table. You meddled when Daniel was alive, and now you are clutching the strings like some queen on her throne. Admit it. You never wanted me in this family. You want to keep me chained here, stuck in this mausoleum, so you can play mother to Liam and erase me. Her voice cracked on the last word, but the venom lingered. I sat in Daniel's old armchair, the white teacup in my lap trembling with the rhythm of my pulse. I tried to hold the line of calm, but every word scraped across my heart like broken glass. I am asking for patience, Sarah, I said softly. We are all wounded. Daniel's absence is not a stage for blame. She barked a bitter laugh. Wounded? You think you are the only one who lost something? I lost my husband, my partner, and now I am chained to an old woman who knows nothing of the real world, who clings to teacups and dusty photographs as if they were currency. You want control, that is all. You think you are better than me. The cup slipped in my grip. Tea spilled onto my palm, hot enough to sting. Still, I stayed silent, letting the hurt sink in where words could not reach. Years of silence had been my shield, but tonight her insults pierced too deep. Then a small figure moved between us. Liam, clutching the scuffed football against his chest, stepped forward until his skinny shoulders squared directly in front of me. His voice wavered at first, but then it rose, strong and sure. "Don't talk to Grandma like that," he shouted. The room froze. Sarah blinked, stunned, as if the boy's words had struck harder than any slap. She opened her mouth, then shut it again, caught off guard by the sudden rebellion. I gasped softly. My eyes filled, not from Sarah's cruelty, but from the sight of Daniel's courage echoing through his son. The set of Liam's jaw, the fire in his eyes. It was Daniel at 10, standing on a Little League field after a bad call, telling the coach, "That's not fair." Sarah recovered, her lips twisting. "Liam, you don't understand. She's trying to control everything. I'm only—" But he cut her off, his fists tightening around the ball. "She loves me. She takes care of me. You shouldn't yell at her." Silence swelled. It was not weak this time. It was heavy, powerful, commanding. Sarah's shoulders slumped for a moment, as if the weight of her son's loyalty pressed her down. She turned her face away, unable to meet his eyes. I felt tears slip down my cheeks, not tears of defeat, but of recognition. For years I had carried Daniel's spirit in memories, photographs, and the quiet act of pouring tea into his favorite cup. But in that instant I realized he had not left completely. He lived inside the boy who now shielded me. I reached forward, resting my hand lightly on Liam's shoulder. "It's all right, sweetheart," I whispered, though my voice shook. "You don't have to fight my battles." But he did not step aside. His small frame remained planted, a wall of love stronger than any argument. Sarah exhaled sharply, muttering under her breath as she gathered the brochures. "You two against me, fine. Keep your moldy house. See how long you can hold it together." She spun on her heel and marched toward the stairs, the echo of her steps fading but leaving the air bruised. When the door slammed upstairs, I leaned back into the armchair and let the tears come fully. They streamed freely, carrying both sorrow and a strange new hope. Liam turned, his face softening, and he pressed the football into my lap. "You don't have to cry, Grandma," he said. "Dad would want me to protect you." I kissed his hair, inhaling the faint scent of grass and childhood. "And he would be proud of you," I whispered, "more than you'll ever know." In that moment, I felt a shift. The balance of power, once tilted so sharply against me, had begun to move. Not because I had raised my voice or wielded the law, but because the truth had found a voice in a child's heart. Daniel's legacy was not just a company or a house in trust, it was courage, reborn in Liam. I held the football and the boy close, and for the first time since the funeral, I felt the strength to breathe without breaking. It was subtle at first. A receipt tucked in the trash that did not match our weekly expenses. A phone call Sarah ended abruptly when I entered the room. Then one evening, while balancing the household ledger, I logged into the joint savings account Daniel had set aside for emergencies. The screen loaded slowly, a pause that made my stomach twist. When the numbers appeared, I froze. The account was empty. The insurance payout Daniel had carefully arranged, gone. Every dollar siphoned away in quiet withdrawals that now stood naked on the page. My hands trembled against the keys. Years of scraping, saving, and Daniel's cautious planning had evaporated like mist. It was not mismanagement. It was intent. I confronted Sarah that night, but the house was already too quiet. Her closet doors gaped open, shelves stripped. The faint scent of perfume clung to the air, sharp and final. On the kitchen counter lay a folded sheet of paper. The handwriting was hers, quick and careless. "I can't live like this anymore. I need my own life. Reed understands me in ways Daniel never did, and I will not waste my youth chained to a house and a mother-in-law. Liam will be better with you. Don't try to find me." The signature curved like a flourish of mockery. My breath left me in a rush, and for a long moment I simply stood there, paper trembling in my hands. The name, Reed Harper, hit me like ice. I remembered him vaguely, a business acquaintance Daniel had distrusted, a man with a smile too slick and eyes too sharp. And now Sarah had chosen him over her own son. I sank into a chair, my body hollow. The house was dark except for the kitchen lamp that cast everything in harsh yellow light. A cicada buzzed outside, its song steady, indifferent to the collapse inside these walls. Then small footsteps padded across the hall. Liam appeared, his hair rumpled from sleep, the worn football tucked under his arm like armor. He looked at me, then at the open closet upstairs, then at the paper clutched in my hand. "Grandma," his voice cracked, "is Mom gone?" I could not lie. I nodded once. He blinked hard, his lips trembling. The football slipped from his grasp and rolled across the floor, bumping against the baseboard with a dull thud. "She left a note," I whispered, the words catching. "She says she needs her own life, but she says you are better here, with me." For a heartbeat, silence swallowed us. Then Liam's shoulders shook. He stepped closer, his voice breaking as he asked, "Grandma, We still have each other, right? We still have us? The question pierced through every wall I had built. I rose and pulled him into my arms. His body was thin, fragile, yet burning with the weight of abandonment no child should carry. My throat closed. Tears blurred the kitchen light until it fractured into shards. Yes, sweetheart, I choked out, holding him tighter. We still have each other, and we always will. He buried his face in my shoulder, his small fists clutching the fabric of my blouse as though it were the last solid thing left in his world. I stroked his hair, rocking him gently, the way I had rocked Daniel after scraped knees and nightmares decades ago. The circle of grief and comfort had turned, and I was mother once more. We sat like that for what felt like hours. Two souls bound by loss, but not broken. Outside, the night deepened, and the world moved on, unaware of our devastation. Yet in that kitchen, a seed of resolve began to take root inside me. If Sarah had abandoned him, then I would not. If Reed Harper had lured her away, then so be it. But Liam would never again wonder if he belonged. I kissed his temple, tasting the salt of both our tears. You and me, Liam. That's enough. We will find a way. His small voice muffled against my shoulder. Promise. I promise. And though my heart ached with betrayal, the words steadied me. They were not a desperate plea. They were a vow. Sarah had chosen flight, but I would choose endurance. For Liam, for Daniel, for the legacy entrusted to me. That night, after tucking him into bed, I sat alone at the table with the folded note beside my teacup. The porcelain gleamed white under the lamplight, a reminder of Daniel's quiet strength. I traced its rim and whispered to the silence, "She thinks we are broken. She will see. We are not." The weeks after Sarah's disappearance passed in a haze of court filings and late-night calls to attorneys. But slowly, the storm settled into a rhythm of survival. With Sarah gone, the old Miller house felt like a cavern echoing with ghosts. I decided to sell off what could be sold within the legal boundaries and moved Liam and myself into a modest cottage on the edge of town. It was a small, single-story home with peeling paint and creaking floors, but it felt human in a way the grand Miller property never had. The first morning there, I woke to birdsong instead of silence. I brewed tea in my faithful white porcelain cup, its rim faintly chipped now, and stood by the narrow kitchen window watching Liam sit cross-legged with a stack of school books. The early light framed him in a soft glow. He mouthed words as he traced sentences with his finger, lips moving silently at first, then softly aloud. "Grandma, can I read this one to you?" he asked, eyes bright with a hunger that had not dimmed despite loss. I carried my tea into the small living room and nodded. "Of course, let's hear it." His voice wavered on the first lines, but steadied as he continued. The room filled with his effort, his determination, and I felt an ache of recognition. In that moment, I saw not only my grandson, but also a boy from years ago, Daniel, sitting in a similar shaft of light, stubbornly reading to me long past bedtime. The memory unfolded without warning. Daniel at 8 years old, hair sticking up, pajamas too short, insisting he would master every word of the story before sleep. His small hand resting on mine when I nodded encouragement. And now here was Liam, carrying that same spark, the same determination, as if history had gently looped back to give me another chance. I blinked back tears and smiled. "You read beautifully, Liam." He grinned shyly and leaned against my shoulder. "Dad used to read a lot too, right?" "Yes," I whispered, the word heavy but tender. "Your father loved words. He believed in stories." The mornings began to settle into a ritual. I would pour tea, careful not to spill, and he would open a book near the window, sunlight at his back. Sometimes he stumbled. Sometimes he soared through paragraphs. Each time I reminded him, "Patience, Liam." One line at a time, and each time he repeated softly, "We still have each other, Grandma." That's enough. Those words became our anchor, thematic echoes that stitched together the holes Sarah's absence had left. Whenever fear or doubt surfaced, Liam would murmur them, as though reminding both of us. And in his voice, the words gained a sacred weight. One Saturday, he found an old notebook among Daniel's things. Inside were crude sketches of trucks, early plans for what would one day become Miller Logistics. Liam turned the pages slowly, reverently, and then whispered, "He started here, didn't he? Just drawings and dreams." I placed a hand over his. "Yes, sweetheart. Dreams that turned into something real because he kept going." He smiled, eyes determined. "Then maybe I can start small too. I'll read and draw and learn. We can build things again, right?" The question cut me deep, half hope, half plea. I kissed his forehead. "Yes, Liam, we can build again. Not just buildings or companies, but a life worth holding on to." In the evenings, when the world turned quiet and the cottage sighed with age, I would sit on the porch with my tea. Liam often joined me, ball under his arm, asking about Daniel. I told him stories of scraped knees and garage experiments, of late-night blueprints and laughter under flickering lights. He listened with wide eyes, weaving those memories into his own sense of belonging. The cottage walls did not echo like the mansion. They embraced us. We filled them with small routines, reading, cooking simple meals, fixing squeaky hinges together. It was not luxury. It was something sturdier. It was family. And in every moment, I clung to the echo. We still have each other. That phrase, whispered by a boy abandoned too soon, became our daily prayer. It was Daniel's voice reborn in Liam's courage. It was my reason to keep breathing, to keep moving forward one morning, one cup of tea, one story at a time. The cottage had settled into a hush after dinner. Liam was rinsing dishes while I sorted a cardboard box labeled Daniel's office. At the bottom lay his laptop, wrapped in a sweater that still carried a trace of his cologne. My hands shook as I set it on the table. I told myself I was only looking for family photos, something gentle to share with Liam on a quiet night. The screen flickered to life. A password field waited like a sealed door. For a breath, I was blank, then muscle memory returned. Daniel never trusted obvious combinations. He used small vowels no one else knew. I typed the day he took his first trucking contract and pressed enter. The desktop opened with a soft chime that felt like a voice saying, "Welcome home." Folders lined the screen in careful rows. Roots, invoices, quarterly, and a simple one named Personal. I breathed out, clicked it, and found subfolders of photos, recipes he had saved for Liam's favorite pancakes, and a folder called Letters. Inside was a single document and a shortcut to his email. I followed the shortcut. The mailbox loaded, a long spine of messages. My eyes drifted to drafts. There it was, a subject line that stopped my heart. "If anything happens," I clicked. The body of the message filled the screen, typed in Daniel's steady rhythm. The date stamp sat like a quiet witness from months before the accident. My throat tightened. I read the first line aloud, although no one had asked me to. "Mom, if anything happens, I want you to keep the company. I trust you." I covered my mouth with both hands. Tears rose so fast I could not catch them. The room swam. Liam stepped from the kitchen, drying his hands on a towel, alarm flashing across his face. "Grandma, are you hurt?" he asked. I shook my head and beckoned him closer. He climbed into the chair beside me, and together we leaned toward the screen as though nearing a campfire. I scrolled to the top and began again, reading each sentence slowly so it would land in the center of us. Daniel wrote about responsibility. He wrote about how love sometimes required walls, not because we wanted distance, but because we deserved safety. He wrote that the company should remain in my hands until Liam was ready, and that secrecy would be the truest kindness for a time. He ended with a line that broke the last seal around my heart. "I believe in your judgment more than my own." Liam pressed his palm to the keyboard as if he could touch his father through the letters. He did not try to be brave. His face crumpled and he cried, a sound that was both small and thunderous. I gathered him into my arm. We stayed there, shoulder to shoulder, letting the words wash over us, grief and relief braided together in a single current, because the message did not only explain the past, it lit a narrow path through the dark ahead. When his breathing steadied, he whispered, "Dad trusted you. That means I can trust you when you say we will be all right." I nodded, stroking his hair. "We will be all right," I said, and for the first time I believed it down to the bone. The email felt like a blessing passed from a father's hand to a mother's and then to a son who had been asked to grow up too quickly. Practical instincts returned. I screenshot the draft and saved a copy to an external drive. I printed it on the cottage's old printer, each sheet sliding out like a small oath. I placed one copy inside the notebook where Liam tracked his reading goals and tucked another into the safe with birth certificates and trust papers. Evidence mattered, but meaning mattered more. Daniel had written to me, not a courtroom. He had made a sacred request, and I would honor it. Liam wiped his cheeks and looked at the photos pinned above the desk. "Can we keep reading it sometimes?" he asked. "Not to be sad, but to remember what he wanted for us." I said yes. We read it again, this time pausing between sentences as if taking small bites of something strong. When we finished, he took a deep breath, squared his shoulders, and said, "If Dad trusted you with the company, I can learn to help one day." I closed the laptop gently and pulled him into a full embrace. "One day," I answered. "For now, you will be a child, and I will be your guardian. That is how we honor him." He nodded, and the set of his jaw softened. Outside, a late train passed, its distant call threading through the night, like a reminder that journeys continue even when maps change. I carried the printed letter to the mantel and placed it in a simple frame beside the white porcelain teacup. The cup held memory, the page held mandate. Together they formed a small altar to love that endures and to duty freely chosen. I stood there with Liam's hand in mine and repeated the promise that had kept us afloat since the night Sarah left. We still have each other. The morning I walked into the courthouse, the air felt heavier than usual. My heels echoed along the polished floors, each step carrying not only my own weight, but also the fragile hope of a little boy who had already lost too much. I carried a slim folder pressed against my chest. Inside were documents, affidavits, Daniel's trust papers, and the quiet truth of a family unraveling and rebuilding. I filed the petition to become Liam's legal guardian. The process required proof of stability, character, and intent. I gathered letters from neighbors who had seen me care for him every day since Sarah vanished. I submitted school attendance records, showing that I walked him to class each morning and greeted him at the gate each afternoon. The attorney helping me whispered, "Your case is strong, Catherine. Trust the process." Sarah did not appear at the first hearing. Her absence spoke louder than any argument. Weeks passed, and then a summons arrived. She had resurfaced with Reed Harper at her side, both of them filing a motion to claim rights over the trust estate. Their argument was written in bold lines. As the surviving spouse, Sarah claimed entitlement to manage the assets for Liam's benefit. They framed me as an aging woman clinging to control. When I read those words, a hollow ache opened in me. Not because I feared losing, truth was on my side, but because of the callousness. They had not mentioned Liam's well-being once, not his needs, not his heart. Only money. The day of the contested hearing arrived. The courtroom smelled faintly of old books and wood polish. Liam stayed at school with a counselor, unaware of the storm swirling around him. I walked in quietly, my file under my arm. Sarah swept through the doors with Reed in a dark suit, her hair sculpted high as if appearances could substitute for devotion. She barely glanced at me. The judge asked for opening statements. Their attorney spoke first, painting Sarah as a grieving widow unfairly sidelined. He spoke of fairness, of rights, of marital property. When my name was mentioned, it was wrapped in insinuations. Too old, too emotional, incapable of guiding a corporation or a child into the future. I sat still. I did not flinch. When it was my turn, my attorney did not embellish. He stood and said simply, "Your Honor, the trust papers speak for themselves." And the evidence of guardianship lies in the daily life of a grandmother raising her grandson. He placed a stack of documents before the bench. I lowered my gaze and folded my hands. Silence became my shield. Sarah fidgeted when the judge began reading aloud the trust's language. Each clause reaffirmed Daniel's decision. The house protected under a testamentary trust, Liam, the sole beneficiary, and guardianship subject to court approval. Reed muttered something under his breath, but I remained still, eyes on the wood grain of the table. Then came the revelation I had waited for. The judge announced, "This court finds that Mrs. Sarah Harper has abandoned her custodial role by willful desertion and financial negligence. The motion to grant her authority over the trust is denied." His gavel struck. The sound rang like a bell across a valley. Sarah's face drained of color. Reed grabbed her elbow, whispering harshly. She hissed back, her mask slipping in a way the whole room could see. I inhaled slowly, quietly. My victory was not loud. It was not flamboyant. It was the weightless lift of justice settling in its rightful place. The judge turned to me. "Mrs. Miller, your guardianship petition is granted. You are hereby appointed as the legal guardian of Liam Miller, with authority to act in his best interests." I closed my eyes. Relief flooded through me, not as triumph, but as solemn duty. When I opened them, I met Sarah's glare. She expected gloating, perhaps. She wanted a reaction, but I gave her nothing. My silence was the only reply. As we filed out, reporters lingered near the courthouse steps, sniffing for scandal. Questions flew in the air like arrows. "Mrs. Miller, do you have a comment? What do you say about your daughter-in-law's accusations? How will you handle the company now?" I clutched the folder to my chest and walked past without a word. My silence became a fortress, an act of defiance more powerful than any speech. Behind me, Sarah raised her voice, insisting the ruling was unjust, that she would appeal. Cameras flashed, capturing her twisted expression. But I kept moving forward, my path clear, my duty defined. That evening, when I returned to the cottage, Liam ran to the door. His arms wrapped around my waist, and I lifted him, whispering, "It is done. You are safe." He didn't understand all the details, but he understood enough. His home was secure, his life steady. Later, as I washed the white teacup and set it gently on the counter, I realized something. Silence is not emptiness. Silence, when chosen, carries the weight of truth. It had been my ally in court, my shield against venom, and my gift to Daniel's memory. In that quiet kitchen, with Liam humming as he arranged his books, I found peace, the kind that speaks louder than any verdict, louder than any argument, the kind that tells you, without words, that justice has already spoken. One Saturday afternoon, Liam came running into the kitchen with a hammer in one hand and a coil of rope in the other. His cheeks were flushed with excitement. "Grandma, can we fix the old swing?" he asked, his voice breathless. I paused, my hands still wet from rinsing the white teacup I had just set aside. For a moment, I didn't understand. Then he tugged my sleeve and pointed toward the backyard, toward the old oak tree that had stood for decades like a guardian of our family's joys and sorrows. The swing had hung there once. Daniel promised Liam he would repair it, but he never had the chance. My throat tightened. That swing was more than wood and rope. It was a dream suspended in midair, left unfinished. We carried the supplies out together. The afternoon sun was kind that day, painting the grass in golden hues, casting shadows that seemed to dance with memory. Liam held the wooden plank, his small fingers steady with determination. I knelt beside him, guiding the rope through the drilled holes, showing him how to knot it so it would hold. His brow furrowed in concentration, and I felt Daniel's spirit hovering near, patient and proud. Was Dad really going to build this for me? Liam asked quietly. Yes, sweetheart, I whispered. My voice trembled, but I steadied it with a smile. He wanted you to fly as high as the sky. This swing was his way of saying he believed you could. Liam nodded, his lips pressed tight, holding back emotions too big for his age. Together we tossed the rope over a sturdy branch. The first try failed, the rope sliding down and tangling in the leaves. He laughed, and so did I. The second try, it caught perfectly. We tugged, pulling it tight, securing the knots. My hands shook a little, not from weakness, but from the weight of what we were building. More than a swing, it was a bridge between past and future. The moment we hung the wooden seat, Liam jumped onto it, gripping the ropes. "Push me, Grandma," he cried. I stepped behind him and placed my hands gently on his back. With the first push, the ropes creaked, the wood swayed, and Liam soared forward into the sunlight. His laughter split the quiet yard, ringing pure and bright. It was a sound I hadn't heard since Daniel was a child, an echo carried through time. As I pushed, my tears spilled freely. I cried for the boy I had raised, for the man he became, and for the child he left behind. But even as I cried, I found myself smiling. Each push felt like weaving Daniel's love into Liam's joy, threading the generations together. The ropes groaned with every swing, steady and sure. The sun lowered, casting long beams through the branches. The shadows stretched, and in them I saw something extraordinary. For a fleeting moment as Liam swung forward, his silhouette merged with another. Daniel's younger self, legs kicking, head thrown back in laughter. My breath caught. The past and present overlapped, reminding me that love doesn't vanish. It transforms. It lingers. It binds. "Grandma, higher!" Liam shouted, breaking the trance. I wiped my cheeks and pushed harder. The wooden plank rose, the rope stretched, and his hair caught the light like a halo. His small hands clutched tightly, but his eyes were fearless. I whispered to myself, "Yes, Daniel, he is brave, just like you." After what felt like hours but was only minutes, Liam slowed, his energy spent. He hopped off and collapsed into the grass, hugging his father's old scuffed soccer ball. That ball had rolled through every chapter of our grief, and now, resting beside the swing, it became part of a story bigger than both of us. He looked up at me, sweaty and smiling. "We did it, Grandma. Dad would be proud, right?" I knelt in the grass, brushing dirt from his cheek. "Yes, darling, more than proud. He's here with us, in every swing, in every laugh, in every beat of your heart." Liam leaned against me, holding the ball, while the swing swayed gently in the evening breeze. My tears had dried, leaving behind a warmth that spread through my chest. For the first time in so long, my grief softened into gratitude. The white teacup waited on the kitchen counter, the ball rested in Liam's lap, and the swing moved slowly back and forth. 3 anchors, 3 generations bound together by memory and love. As the sun sank low, painting the horizon in shades of fire and gold, I whispered, "We still have each other, and that is enough." In that moment, it truly was. When the house grew quiet and Liam finally drifted to sleep, I sat alone at the kitchen table with my white teacup in front of me. The steam rose slowly, curling like fragile ribbons in the lamplight. My hands circled the porcelain, as if drawing strength from something simple, something grounding. It struck me then how far I had come, and how much I had changed. For years, I had felt like a background character in my own life. I was the widowed mother who supported Daniel, the grandmother who stood politely behind Sarah, the woman who was expected to accept scraps of presence and dignity. I was convenient when they needed me to babysit, invisible when decisions were made, and for a time, I allowed it. But Daniel's death, as cruel and senseless as it was, had forced me into a place I never imagined. I was thrust into the role of protector, provider, and guardian for Liam. The silence that once made me small had transformed into something else entirely. Now my silence was a shield, a form of power that spoke louder than Sarah's shouting or Reed's demands. I had discovered strength in restraint, dignity in refusing to be dragged into their chaos. Yet as I stared into the cooling tea, another thought crept in, one that unsettled me. What if Sarah came back? What if she appeared at my door, eyes hollow, voice trembling, begging for forgiveness? Would I have the capacity to give it? I remembered the night she left, her scrawled note, the empty bank accounts, the way Liam's voice broke when he asked if we still had each other. That memory was a wound that had only just begun to heal. Part of me wanted to slam the door forever, to protect Liam and myself from the poison of her betrayal. But another part of me, quieter and more dangerous, whispered that forgiveness was not weakness. It was freedom. I sipped the tea, bitter at first, then warm. I thought of Daniel. He had loved Sarah once, enough to build a family with her. He would never have wanted hatred to consume me or to shape the way Liam saw the world. And yet, forgiving too easily might teach Liam that people could wound us without consequence. That thought twisted in my chest. What was justice? Was it holding Sarah accountable by never letting her near us again? Or was it showing mercy, not for her sake, but for ours, for Liam's heart, so that it would not grow hardened too soon? I didn't have the answer, and maybe that was the truth I needed to face. Life rarely hands us clean solutions. I glanced toward the window. The swing moved slightly in the evening breeze, ropes creaking like whispers from the past. Liam's soccer ball rested against the porch step, waiting for tomorrow's play. These were the treasures I guarded now. Forgiveness, or not, Sarah's choices had carved her path. Mine was to build something different, something steadier, for the boy who still needed me. In the hush of that moment, I allowed myself to ask the question aloud. If Sarah returned one day, broken and repentant, would I forgive her? My voice quivered against the quiet walls. I waited, as if expecting the house to answer back. But only the creak of the swing came through, soft and steady. The truth is, I don't know. Perhaps I never will until that day comes. Forgiveness is not a decision made in theory. It is forged in the heat of the moment, shaped by the courage of the heart. All I know is this. My silence is no longer submission. It is choice. It is strength. It is the way I protect the life Daniel entrusted to me and the childhood Liam deserves. I turned the teacup slowly in my hands, watching the last drops of tea cling to the bottom. We still have each other, I whispered, repeating the line that had become our anchor, and that was enough for now. So I leave the question with you, whoever is listening to my story. If you were in my place, carrying both love and betrayal in the same fragile heart, would you open the door to Sarah again, or would you close it forever? I will let you sit with that question, just as I do each night, because sometimes the hardest answers are the ones we must live with in silence. The late summer air was gentle, carrying with it the faint smell of grass and warm earth. Liam and I sat on the porch steps of our small home, the swing creaking lightly in the breeze. His legs dangled, sneakers tapping against the wooden boards, and I could feel the weight of the day softening around us. For the first time in months, peace didn't feel like a stranger. He leaned into me, his voice low and thoughtful. "Grandma, when I grow up, I want to study business. I want to keep Dad's company just like he would have. You'll teach me, won't you?" For a moment, I couldn't answer. The lump in my throat was too thick. My hand moved almost on its own, resting on his shoulder. His bones felt strong beneath my palm, but his body was still that of a child. And yet, in that small frame, I felt Daniel's spirit, steady, determined, full of hope. "Yes, sweetheart," I whispered, my voice breaking with tenderness. "I'll teach you everything I know, and when the time comes, you'll carry it with pride." His face lit up, his eyes reflecting the last rays of sunlight. In that instant, the ache of grief shifted into something new, not an absence, but a continuation. Daniel lived in Liam's dreams, in his questions, in the way his small hand tightened around mine. The wind stirred again, brushing strands of my silver hair across my face. I let it stay there for a moment, welcoming the reminder of time's passage, of survival, of grace. Liam pressed closer against me, and together we looked out at the quiet street, the world carrying on in its unassuming way. "We still have each other," he said softly, almost as if reminding me. I closed my eyes, letting the words sink in. "Yes, Liam," I answered, my heart swelling. "We still have each other." That phrase, once whispered in despair, had become our anthem. It was not just survival, it was defiance, it was love, it was the promise that no matter how the world tried to strip us bare, we would hold on to the core of who we were, a family, 2 generations bound not by circumstance, but by choice. As twilight deepened, I thought of the long road that had brought us here, the loss, the betrayals, the silence that had been my greatest weapon. I had learned that sometimes strength is not in the words shouted or the battles fought aloud, but in the quiet conviction to stand firm, to keep going, to protect what truly matters. And so here we were, 2 souls on a porch, with the hum of cicadas filling the night. The company, the trust, the battles in court, all of it mattered. But at the end of the day, this was the real inheritance. A boy with his father's fire in his heart, a grandmother who finally understood her worth, and the echo of Daniel's dream, alive in both of us. Before I close my story tonight, I want to leave you with a question. If you were in my place, would you have kept silent as I did? Would you have trusted that silence could protect the ones you love? I wonder what you would have done. And before we say goodbye, we would love to know. Where are you watching from? Is it a quiet morning with a warm cup of coffee in your hands, or a late night where stories like this keep you company? Share with us in the comments. We read everyone with gratitude. If this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing to this channel. Not just to hear more stories like mine, but to be part of a community that still believes in kindness, healing, and second chances. Thank you for spending your time with us today. Wherever you are, I hope you carry this story with you. And remember, sometimes the miracle does not knock on your door with noise and splendor. Sometimes it waits quietly until you are ready to open your heart. Take care, and we will see you in the next story.